Okay, guys, everybody's doing good? All right, I do think that it's important that we understand that growth, improvement, development is not a one-day event. I think ultimately for the individual players, staff members that we have, for us as a team, you just don't get to the top of a mountain in one day, right? You got to climb the mountain. And I think there's important things to remember while we're doing that, right? It's going to require a tremendous amount of work. I think that you got to stretch yourself. You got to get uncomfortable. It's going to be harder than you thought it was going to be. There's going to be some uncomfortable days. I think it's important that we always keep a really good attitude toward learning, and we apply the things that we learn along the way. And look, this requires focus. I think there's distractions. You can get distracted with failure. You can get distracted with success. I think success probably is even more of an issue at times. And I do think there's an accountability piece here. Growth can be accelerated when you have a watchful eye watching you closely. And I think it's beneficial for us, not only the staff members, but also the leadership on our team. We provide that. And we got to build on the past, right? We got to take the things that we know are true, that we've learned that are true, and apply those. Applications, one thing to know, it's another thing to apply. And we have to practice what we know works, tweak and adapt and evolve in the areas where we know we need to do that. And then ultimately, I think if you're going to continue to grow, you got to remember, back up a little bit, take a deep breath, and have some gratitude for where you're at, the opportunities that come with that. And I think ultimately that's where we're at as a team. I think we have to continue to grow, improve, develop. We showed signs of life Saturday in certain parts of our team. I do think that's important that we understand that even though we got a good result, there are some areas where we need to improve, whether that's communication, fundamentals, decision-making, a lack of discipline at times when it comes to penalties. But overall, we did a lot of positive things. We're excited about turning the page. I think every week is a new week. There's mental toughness required, whether you had success the prior week or you had failure the prior week. The ability to turn the page and get started on the next challenge is important. So South Carolina is a team that we have tremendous respect for. Shane Beamer is an outstanding coach and motivator, and always has his team ready to be competitive and play. They play with good effort. I do think he's got a tough group, and they cause problems for every team that they played. I think Williams-Brice is one of the tougher venues and better venues in the country, having played there many times in the past. And look, we're an underdog on the road in the SEC, and this is an area on our team where we need to accept the challenge and take the next step by playing well and winning the game on the road. So we challenge the staff to do their best work. Our job is to connect with people and produce results. I do think there's a element to this game that is about connection. There's a human element, and I think we want to have an aggressive mindset this week. We want to have good energy, and we want to work to help our players, to teach our players, to lead our players, to mentor our players. And I think that we're excited about getting to work today and certainly getting on the grass tomorrow. What questions do we have here?
What tweaks, if any, have you guys made in your process of going on the road?
Yeah.
And you mentioned slow starts. Do you have some data you have that on starts on the road versus maybe at home?
Yeah, no, I think we're going to try to get to Columbia a little bit earlier this week. We're tweaking our schedule on Thursday. We're going to put a huge emphasis on sleep Wednesday night, and then things that, just little things. I mean, I think we're going to arrive to the stadium a little earlier. All these things are typical quality control, that we do. And I think ultimately there's a pulse from the players that you got to take into account, right? So most of it's mental, I do think that, I just met with the accountability group at 11, and we talked about mentally being prepared, physically being prepared, but also emotionally being prepared. You got to anticipate and visualize what it's going to be like, that it will be challenging. There'll be ups and downs in the game. Our dialogue during the week about being prepared to respond, offense supporting defense, defense supporting offense, and playing really good in the kicking game. So I think that ultimately, kind of like what I described earlier, we got to know and apply the things that we've learned in the past.
Where's the energy come from? Because I don't know that we ever followed up on this, and not to go back, but Shamar after the last road game was like, it was an early start, just kind of was tough to get going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, if we had bounced back and played better in the game and won the game, we'd have never had that conversation, right? So, I mean, I think some of this is, a product of the result, but ultimately, it's our job to do the best job we can do for the players, right? And I think ultimately you have to listen to them a little bit. So we tweaked things, and I think ultimately, bottom line is when the ball's spotted and we kick it off, okay, you've got to be ready to mix it up, and if you've done a good job preparing all week, you're mentally prepared, you can communicate at a high level, you can play fast, you can anticipate, and then physically you got to have a sharp sword, you got to be ready to go. That axe has got to be, can't be dull, so got to make the work a little bit easier. If we take the right approach Tuesday, Wednesday, if we're growing and improving in the physical parts of our team, we can apply that. And then again, like I mentioned before, there's an emotional component that I think we have to bring that, got to create an edge, and that's what this week's about.
Talk about the dynamic that having Arliss Boardingham being able to run the routes in the middle and Trey Wilson kind of stretching the field horizontally. Can you talk about the dynamic that brings to your offense?
Yeah, Arliss is a young man who, he was a part of that group of players. I can still remember when we hit the ground after the signing period was over. All right, who are the available players? We evaluated a ton of players. This guy's in California. And, we started dialogue with him. He's a sharp young man, comes from a great family, and he has a unique skill set. So he had a little bit of an injury last year that set back his development because all this tight end stuff was new. But we do think that this guy has a future. And, it's good to see some of that. This guy is he's a good run-after-catch player. And I think he's really a guy that's capable of running a full route tree. He could play inside and outside. So smart enough to handle it. I think he's learning the fundamentals of the position. For a freshman to be able to go do what he did the other day, I think is impressive. And then certainly Trey. Trey's a guy that you got to be intentional about making sure he has an opportunity to impact the game every week. So, and Trey has got unique acceleration. He's quick. He's tough to tackle. He's got some play strength. So, yeah, those two guys played well Saturday, and ultimately can they sustain it? That's the question. Young player, can you keep your humility? Can you keep your practice habits and your approach? I do think that's part of our team that I'm excited about is I think we do have a group of young players that are getting comfortable on game day, but they're also getting comfortable with what the week looks like and how to prepare and be ready to be at your best for the team.
I know each game stands on its own, but obviously you guys did an effective job on Spencer Rattler last year. Anything that maybe you take from that and the challenge of facing him in the passing game again this year? Yeah,
no, these are two completely different teams. Spencer's a really good player. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. He's got a really good group of skill players. They do a nice job of designing concepts. They're very multiple. And, you know, there's no doubt. I mean, every week affecting the quarterback is important, you know, but when you play a guy like Spencer, it's even more important.
How do you feel about your youth in the secondary right now? You had to start 2 true freshmen at safety, for example, and obviously it's going to pay dividends down the road, but, you know, in the present, how
Yeah.
dicey is that, and what are your thoughts?
No, those guys got here in January, and I do think that because they are smart and mature and really work hard at it, and they come from good backgrounds. You know, they were a little bit more prepared. Bryce comes from a really good program, and certainly Jordan has been working as a secondary player for a long time. I think they transition well. So Jakeem Jackson has earned snaps, and he's had, you know, some really good days, good plays, and then he's made some mistakes along the way. So he continues to get better. He showed some toughness and some resiliency by overcoming some of those things. So, you know, I do think that all those guys are very capable players. And nowadays, you got to be able to get a young player ready to go. So at about every position, truth be known.
You mentioned the changes in the lead up to the game in order to maybe spur some quicker starts on the road. What are some of the things that you think need to happen on the field, maybe offensively, to get yourself going